Hello and welcome to the World News on VOP TV. I'm Masinachi Okafo. We begin with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visiting an army training base and called for intensifying drills to prepare for war as U.S. and South Korean forces conducted a large-scale joint military exercise. Kim was joined by high-ranking defense officials at the military base in the western region of the country, where he oversaw drills in an environment little different from actual war. Images released by state media showed Kim wearing a leather jacket observing North Korean troops firing rifles and rocket launchers. One photo showed the North Korean leader holding an assault rifle in firing position. The visit came as the United States and South Korea continued their annual Freedom Shield exercise, which kicked off on Monday. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has criticized the United States for trying to suppress China's rise through sanctions and reiterated Beijing's commitment to uphold the multipolar world war with partners such as Russia today. Speaking to local and foreign media during the annual meeting of China's rubber stamp parliament, Wang said, while relations between China and the United States have improved since the summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping in November, Washington's misconception of China remains strong. It has not honored the promises made during the summit. Questioning Washington's credibility as a great power, Wang urged the U.S. to view China's rise and development objectively and rationally handle its interactions with Beijing, while Wang urged the U.S. to promote a healthy and stable development of bilateral relations alongside China. He touted Beijing's close partnership with Russia, saying both countries continue to deepen political mutual trust while pursuing mutually beneficial cooperation. Meanwhile, Japan is concerned about closer military ties between China, Russia, which could have wide-ranging implications for Tokyo as well as for the region. It came as China boosted its military expenditure for 2024 by 7.2%, marking the biggest jump in 5 years. The Asian giant's defense budget would rise to 181.7 billion euros. On Tuesday, China's foreign minister Wang Yi pledged closer ties with Russia while warning that a conflict between China and the U.S. would have unimaginable consequences. Wang, who fielded dozens of media questions during the annual meeting of China's legislature, praised the country's strengthening links with Russia, with deepening trust and fresh opportunities ahead. Hong Kong's government plans to introduce the Article 23 National Security Bill to the legislature, aiming to quell dissent in the former British colony. City leader Jung Lee urges swift passage of the bill. The proposed laws covered expunged state secrets and sedition following a recent public consultation period. Despite the bill's submission, it will undergo multiple rounds of debate in the Legislative Council, potentially stretching the process over weeks. The government emphasizes the urgency due to escalating geopolitical complexities and lingering national security threats. Critics, including the U.S. government, fear the bill will further restrict freedoms in Hong Kong, condemning its broad and ambiguous provisions. Despite opposition, the government, South Security Bureau and Justice Department are working tirelessly to finalize the bill. More stories coming up after the break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. The missile attack by Yemen's Houthis rebel on a commercial ship in the Gulf of Aden on Wednesday killed 3 of its crew members and forced survivors to abandon the vessel. It was the first fatal strike in a campaign of assaults by the Iranian-backed group over Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The attack on the Liberian-owned bulk carrier True Confidence further escalates the conflict on a crucial maritime route linking Asia and the Middle East to Europe that has disrupted global shipping. The Houthis have launched the attack since November last year. In response, the U.S. began an airstrikes campaign in January that so far hasn't halted the attacks. The U.S. Military Central Command said on Wednesday an anti-ship ballistic missile launched from a Houthi-controlled area in Yemen struck the True Confidence, causing significant damage to the ship. In addition to the 3 deaths, at least 4 crew members were wounded, with 3 in critical condition. At least 110 Palestinian prisoners are being held in overcrowded cells at the 8th Zion Detention Center in the southern occupied West Bank. The Commission for Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs pointed out that food was insufficient and of poor quality, in addition to the medical negligence of sick prisoners and the significant shortage of clothes. Prisoners have had to alternate sleeping times due to the lack of beds. Tighter security measures and continuous attempts at provocation and extortion were carried out by soldiers against the prisoners, it reported. Lawyer Jacqueline El Faraja also was recently able to visit 33 prisoners, most of whom were beaten up, abused and humiliated before being arrested. She said marks of torture were visible all over the prisoners' bodies. Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz concluded a visit to the UK today, a trip that was not authorized by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Gantz arrived in London from Washington, where he held talks with Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, National Secretary Advisor Jake Sullivan, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. His trips were opposed by Netanyahu, who ordered the Israeli embassies in Washington and London not to help with Gantz's visit in any way. Israel has continued its deadly military offensive on the Gaza Strip, now in its 153rd day following October 7 attack by the Palestinian group Hamas, which Tel Aviv said killed nearly 1,200 people. At least 30,800 Palestinians have since been killed and nearly 73,000 others injured amid mass destruction and shortages of necessities. Opposition activists and pro-government media in Syria says Islamic State militants attacked villagers collecting truffles in the eastern part of the country on Wednesday, killing at least 18 people and leaving dozens injured and missing. The attack against the truffle hunters was one of the deadliest strikes by the Islamic State group in the area in more than a year. It took place in the desert area near the town of Khobjab in the eastern province of Deir el-Zor that borders Iraq. Some of the truffle gatherers may have been kidnapped, opposition activists said. Despite the militant group's defeat in Syria in March 2019, its sleeper cells still carry deadly attacks in Syria and neighboring Iraq across a wide swath of territory where the extremists had once run an Islamic caliphate. Since truffle hunters work in large groups in remote areas, IS militants in previous years have reportedly preyed on them, emerging from the desert to kill many and abduct others to be ransomed for money. Separately, in Syria, a rebel-held Northwest and Al-Qaeda-linked group released more than 400 detainees from its jails after days of a protest demanding their freedom. In another development, India's embassy in Moscow has confirmed the death of a citizen recruited by the Russian army. Last month, the foreign ministry in New Delhi said it was working to secure discharges for about 20 Indian nationals stuck in the Russian army. The embassy did not elaborate on the circumstances behind Mohammed Asfan's death, but said it was in touch with his family and Russian authorities. Asfan's mother, Mohammed Imran, told the French newsman in February that his siblings had been missing for nearly 2 months. The embassy announced the news on X and said they would make efforts to send his mortal remains to India. Indian warship INS Kolkata has rescued 21 crews members, including one Indian national, after their Barbados-flagged cargo vessel was hit by a missile in the Gulf of Aden. The crew members had abandoned bulk carrier MV True Confidence after it caught fire following the attack on Wednesday. Indian warship INS Kolkata has rescued 21 crew members, including one Indian national, after the Barbados-flagged cargo vessel was hit by a missile in the Gulf of Aden. The crew members had abandoned bulk carrier MV True Confidence after it caught fire following the attack on Wednesday. Navy spokesperson Commander Vivek Madhelk stated the INS Kolkata, deployed for maritime security operations in the Gulf of Aden, arrived at the scene of action at the 4:45 p.m. and rescued 21 crew members, including one Indian national, from a life raft using its integral helicopter and boats. He also mentioned that critical medical aid was provided to the injured crew by the ship's medical team. The rescued crew, including the critically injured personnel, have been evacuated to Djibouti by INS Kolkata. We're still in India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made a historic visit to the disputed region of Kashmir, marking his first trip to territory in 5 years. The Muslim majority region is administered by India and Pakistan in parts and claimed by both in full. A small portion is also held by China. The region has been a continuous point of contention for decades, with periodic escalations leading to military confrontations and diplomatic strains. Today's visit comes against the backdrop of India's recent actions, such as the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019, altering the special status of Kashmir. The Himalayan region has been transformed and integrated with the rest of India, Modi has claimed, crediting the change to its government's continuous decision to revoke its special status. In Phuket, Thailand, a Swiss man named Zafar had his visa revoked following the backlash after allegedly kicking a local woman near his villa. Phil and his Thai wife believed the woman was intruding on their property, but later apologized amidst growing anger from the community. Hundreds of local protesters protested against outside Phil's seaside villa, demanding his expulsion. The incident occurred in February 24 when Phil reportedly kicked Thandao Chantman, a doctor of Phuket, and berated her for trespassing. Phuket, a popular tourist destination with millions of visitors annually, is home to over 100,000 foreigners. The incident has sparked outrage among locals, leading to calls for Phil's visa revocation and the restoration of public access to the beach near his property. More stories after the break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Over to the U.S., Nikki Haley will suspend her presidential campaign, reportedly paving the way for Donald Trump to secure the Republican nomination and face Joe Biden in the November elections. While refraining from endorsing Trump directly, Haley's call for him to court her supporters underscores a strategic move to consolidate the party's base behind the former president, despite her efforts to appeal to moderate Republicans and independents. Trump's overwhelming dominance among conservative voters ultimately overshadowed Haley's campaign, highlighting the enduring strength of his grip on the party. The impending shutdown between Trump and Biden, both grappling with low approval ratings, foreshadows a deeply divisive election in a country already fractured by political polarization. Meanwhile, a recent poll by health policy research firm KFF indicates that over a quarter of female black voters consider abortion as their top issue in the current presidential elections. This marks a notable departure from previous election cycles where white conservative evangelicals typically prioritized abortion as a key voting issue. These voters were strongly motivated to support Donald Trump in recent elections due to his pledge to appoint Supreme Court justices who would restrict abortion rights. This contrasts with the previous elections where white evangelicals held sway. Overall, 12% of surveyed voters prioritized abortion in this year's election, with specific groups like black women and those under 50 more likely to do so. Notably, 2/3 of those prioritizing abortion support its legislation in all or most cases. Following the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade, many southern states, where a significant portion of black Americans reside, quickly enacted strict abortion laws. Roughly 25 million women were affected by these new restrictions, despite reports of former President Trump's support for a national abortion ban at 16 weeks. Nearly 2/3 of voters polled opposed such a measure. The U.S. House Committee on Energy and Commerce is set to vote on legislation requiring China's ByteDance to divest from TikTok within 6 months or face a U.S. ban, marking a significant move in the country's scrutiny of the app, popular among around 120 million U.S. users. Representatives Mike Gallagher and Raja Krimothi introduced a bill aimed at addressing national security concerns related to Chinese ownership of TikTok, receiving praise from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who emphasized the administration's support for tackling threats posed by certain technology services operating in the U.S. While TikTok asserts it hasn't and won't share U.S. user data with the Chinese government, the proposed legislation seeks to enhance legal measures to deal with the app usage. You may recall that the former President Donald Trump tried to ban TikTok in 2020 but was blocked by the U.S. courts. A tragic event unfolded off the coast of Indian Shores, Florida, as 17-year-old William sank visiting from Quebec, Canada with his swim team, died during team drills in the Gulf of Mexico. Sang disappeared during the drills, prompting a search operation. His body was later discovered by an underwater search and recovering team. While authorities have not disclosed the exact cause of deaths, they believe the incident was not suspicious. Witnesses observed Zhang's head bobbing in the water before he disappeared, likely caught in a rip current, a powerful and potentially dangerous phenomenon. Rip currents, narrow channels or powerful currents traveling away from shore at speeds of up to 8 feet per second, pose significant risk of swimmers, according to Noah. The drowning deaths often occur when individuals are swept away from shore by rip currents and become unable to swim back due to fear, panic, exhaustion, or lack of swimming skills. This tragic incident underscores the importance of understanding the respecting the dangers of rip currents when swimming in open waters. Protesting students in Mexico City on Wednesday commanded a pickup truck and used it to ram down the wooden doors of the National Palace in the state. They battered down the doors and entered the colonial-era palace where the president lives and held his daily press briefings before they were driven off by security agents. The palace, in a historic structure dating back to the 1970s and was built on the site of the Aztec Emperor's Palace. The demonstration, like many others over the years, was called to protest the abduction and murder of 43 students a decade ago. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador called the protest a provocation and claimed the demonstrators had sledgehammers and blowtorches. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen won the backing of the EU's leading political group, the centre-right European People's Party, to head the bloc's powerful executive for another 5 years. The only candidate in the party ballot, von der Leyen listed the war in Ukraine, the crisis in Gaza, establishing the Middle East and the rise of China as key challenges for the 27-nation European Union, a wealthy grouping for 450 million people. Von der Leyen won the 400 votes in favor and 82 against, an EPP official said, as U2's song Beautiful Day blasted from the speakers. The backing comes ahead of an EU-wide parliamentary election in June that will lead to the appointment of a new slate of top EU officials, including the head of the Brussels-based Commission. Currently seen as a clear favorite to lead the Commission again, von der Leyen would begin a new term as Europe looks to strengthen its security and defense while Russia's wages war on its borders and Donald Trump eyes a return to the White House. The European Parliament's International Trade Committee has approved the extension of the current preferential trade treatment regime to support Ukraine and Moldova, with 26 members in favor, 10 against, and 1 abstention. The proposal extends the temporary suspension of import duties and quotas for Ukrainian agricultural exports to the EU for another year until June 2025. Additionally, the legislation grants the European Commission authority to swiftly impose necessary measures in case of significant disruptions to EU or member states' markets due to Ukrainian imports. Separately, the committee voted to suspend all duties on imports from Moldova for another year, with 28 in favor, 2 against, and 6 abstentions. The decision will now go to the European Parliament for a first reading vote at its plenary session next week, followed by formal approval from the Council and publication in the EU's official journal. Taras Kacha, Ukraine's trade representatives, commended the decision, highlighting efforts to reduce amendments aimed at restricting Ukrainian access to the EU market. The proposal follows earlier negotiations among EU member states where a mandate was agreed upon to extend the suspension of import duties and quotas on Ukrainian exports to another year. However, dissatisfaction among farmers in EU countries bordering Ukraine, particularly in Poland, led to protests against the initial proposal by the European Commission, which lacked safeguards for agricultural products. Coming up, more stories after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned. In business, a Google employee has been charged with stealing trade secrets related to artificial intelligence from the tech giant Lin Ding, who also goes by Leon Ding, is accused of occupying confidential information from Google, including technology involved in building blocks of Google's advanced supercomputing data centers. The Justice Department is taking a tough stance on protecting sensitive technologies, and Ding faces up to 10 years in prison for each of the 4 counts of theft of trade secrets he is charged with. According to the indictment, Ding allegedly began downloading hundreds of confidential files in 2022. Over the course of a year, he transferred these sensitive data to his personal cloud storage account. Prosecutors believe Ding was acting in collaboration with 2 Chinese AI companies. He was reportedly offered a leadership position at one of these companies just months after starting to steal from Google. This case highlights the growing concern around intellectual property theft, particularly in the realm of cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence. Still in business, Starbucks is facing the consequences of the recent conflicts between Israel and Hamas. The coffee chain's Middle East franchise, Ashaya Group, has let off thousands of employees, citing a challenged work environment. The decision comes after the customers in the region boycotted Starbucks in protest of what they perceived as the brand's support for Israel's action in Gaza. This boycott, coupled with weaker sales already being experienced, Manuel Akanji and Julian Alvarez killed the tie as a contest inside 10 minutes before Erling Haaland drilled in his 29th goal of the season. Mohamed Illinois briefly reduced the Danish champions' deficit to 2-1 on the night, but Copenhagen were outclassed over 2 legs as the European champions remain on course for another time. Moving on to entertainment, The Voice African Idol star dies. Singer and vocal coach Deborah Bring has died aged 72. Best known for her work as a vocal coach on The Voice and American Idol, she'd also worked with the stars including Jennifer Hudson, Barry Manilow, Bob Dylan, and Kelly Clarkson. Actress and singer Jennifer Hudson paid tribute on X, sharing a clip of her rehearsing with Bert and also singing with Sir Elton John. That's a wrap on World News on VLP TV. Thanks for watching. I'm Mastinachi Okafor. Stay tuned for more programs on the station.